Hello and welcome to the Waterfront Walking Virtual Tour. My name is Kurt with the Downtown Waterfront Alliance and I will be your guide today. The Downtown Waterfront Alliance, the Harbor History Museum and Harbor Wild Watch have all come together to bring you these waterfront walking tours for the past 6 years. And because of the current situation in the world with COVID, this year's tours will be brought to you virtually via Facebook and YouTube. Our Skiffs to Spirits tour explores historical industries and social life before and after Prohibition. Even though I am super passionate about Gig Harbor, please remember that I am not a historian, but I am a history junkie. It's simply not possible to cover everything about Gig Harbor on each stop, so feel free to share your knowledge and stories with us in the comments section. You're also welcome to ask us questions, and we will do our best to answer them. Now today, we'll be learning about the area referred to as Gig Harbor's working waterfront. It's called that because it was the heart of two major industries that shaped early Gig Harbor: boat building and commercial fishing. First, let's talk about boat building. To the left is what is known as the Gig Harbor Boat Shop. But this site has been home to a series of boat building companies over the years. First, it was Conrad Anderson & Sons, who originally built it back in the early 1900s. And then next was the Glein Boat Company beginning in 1945. And over those years, Art Glein successfully built and repaired many yachts and fishing boats, and many of these boats are still used in the Northwest waters today, and several of them still exist here in downtown Gig Harbor. But in January 1950, something really fascinating happened down here. The harbor froze over completely. People were out there ice skating and walking and sledding on the ice. But the impact it had on the Boatyard is it trapped boats that were already here and making it difficult for Art Glein, the owner, to complete his boat orders on time. And boats that needed repair couldn't get in. So he was frustrated and eventually put the Boatyard up for sale. So later in 1950, two gentlemen named Ed Hoppin and Don Harder bought this property and the existing buildings and opened Eddon Boat Company, a combination of their first names, Ed and Don, Eddon. In the early 2000s, the property was sold and the buildings were slated for demolition. But through an extensive grassroots effort, the property was acquired by the city of Gig Harbor in 2004 and opened to the public in 2009. Today, there is a very nice dock for public access and activities led by the Gig Harbor Boat Shop, including boat building workshops. There's also a livery service where guests can rent a replica of a historic skiff or an electric boat for an afternoon on the water. The second part of the Skiffs theme here is one of Gig Harbor's pioneering industries: commercial fishing. Because of the worsening economic and political conditions in Yugoslavia in the mid-1800s, with heavy taxes, unjust land allocation, government regulations causing great poverty, starvation, and even death, many Slavs left in search of a better life. Austria and Hungary were constantly fighting for control of the Dalmatian islands in Yugoslavia, and the Slavic people themselves were constantly fighting for a country of their own, free from Austria and Hungary. As a result, many left to avoid the constant war and poverty. They were farmers, winemakers, fishermen. While they were strong and hardy people, most of them were penniless and could not read and write. Yet, they came, worked hard, made decent living, and raised their families here. The most popular destinations for them were North America, Chile in the south, Africa, and Australia. While the boat building and milling industries have faded in Gig Harbor, commercial fishing has remained a prominent industry. Third and fourth generation Croatians have carried on the tradition of their families. Many, but not all, moor their boats here year-round. In fact, Gig Harbor is still home to one of the largest commercial fishing fleets on the West Coast, with over 120 commercial fishing permit holders that ply the waters from California to Alaska. Part of what makes Gig Harbor very unique. It's a multi-million-dollar industry that provides hundreds of direct and indirect jobs and injects thousands of dollars into the local economy. One final structure I want to mention before we leave this spot is the Ancich dock to the far right. This is now home to fishing boats and yachts, but it was once the meeting place for the local fishermen. This time of night was one of the reasons we chose this tour, because it is highball time, 5 p.m., when the fishermen would get together to swap stories, play games, and share advice over a favorite beverage. These fishermen were loyal friends on land, but fiercely competitive and even cutthroat on the water. So we've had Skiffs and Spirits at this stop, with more to come. As we leave the park, we will pass a granite public art structure off to your right here. It pays homage to a prevalent Puget Sound sea creature, mussels, We sometimes call this area of town Gig Harbor's Muscle Beach. As we walk to our next stop, we can make a brief stop at beautiful Ancich Park too. This is a good place to talk about net sheds, which are very important to the fishing industry and are a constant reminder about our heritage here in Gig Harbor. They give us a great example of how skiffs played a role in shaping the people and industries along the waterfront. Down in the water, over to your left, we can get a better look at a restored net shed. Croatian immigrants Peter and Katie Ancich purchased the property from John Novak and built their own water net shed in the 1920s. And although the roof was replaced sometime in the late 1950s, the modest structure and the method of construction and siding materials exist largely in their original condition. And finally, what have you noticed about the many names you've heard so far in Gig Harbor? Most end in "ich." Originally, the ending "IC" was added to the name of the oldest son, meaning the one who inherits. Pronounced "ich" in a Croatian name, it means son of or clan of. It's a very common surname ending in most Slavic languages, similar to the addition of the suffix son, S-O-N, in Scandinavian names like Peterson, Anderson, etc. Well, that is it for our tour today. Thank you so much for joining us on our exploration of Eddon Boat Park and Ancich Park. Tell your family, friends, and anyone thinking about visiting Gig Harbor in the future to watch these videos to learn a little more about our beautiful waterfront and how we are all past and present tied to the water. Thank you.